In western Sierra Nevada of central California lies Yosemite National Park. This park borders both the Sierra and the Stanislaus National Forests. This vast wilderness attracts over 4 million people every year. It's an expansive land covering around 1,200 square miles, popularly known for its captivating waterfalls. But in recent times, the park has also become captivating for another reason, something more troubling. That is, the many disappearances that have taken place on this soil, which many out there claim to be unusual for one reason or another. The disappearance of Matthew Green provides a cautionary tale for everyone that loves to spend time in the wilderness. This is a man that disappeared from the face of the earth and failed to leave behind a single trace or clue as to what happened to him. Matthew was 39 years old and was considered to be very intelligent. He was a high school maths teacher at the time, but he was also a very experienced climber and he did this a lot in his free time. In mid-July of 2013, Matthew was dropping his car off at an auto shop for repairs in the Mammoth Lakes area. This is a small ski town in California's eastern Sierra, bordering Yosemite National Park. This is a trip that had been successful and enjoyable up until now. He and a number of friends of his had been climbing in the area, but around the time they were planning to leave and head back to Colorado for more climbing, his car blew a head gasket. His friends still left as planned, and he agreed to meet them at a Colorado mountain range. Only Matthew would never meet with his friends again. As the work on his car progressed, he sent a text to his friend which read, "I may have to spend the rest of my life here in Mammoth." The final time Matthew was heard from was when he spoke to his parents on the phone on the 16th of July 2013. The following day, he was supposed to pick his car up, but he never showed up at the garage. What was found thereafter was that his campsite was left untouched, meaning that there didn't appear to have been any kind of struggle with a third party or animal. The authorities then contacted his bank and phone provider. It was realised that his credit cards hadn't been used, nor had he made contact with anyone else. There was one clue left behind at the campsite though, a couple of pages torn out from a mountaineering book which perhaps hinted at the Minarets and Ritter Range. This is a rugged mountain area in the Ansel Adams Wilderness. Even today, we're not sure if Matthew actually made it to the Minarets, and his body has never been found. He never told anyone where he was going or what he was doing, so the assumption was that he was going to relax around the campsite and wait for the car, but this clearly wasn't the case. The problem this caused was actually quite major because the authorities had no earthly idea where they were even supposed to begin the search. As a result of this, the official search couldn't even begin, so instead they sent search teams on training efforts to the Minarets and Ritter Range. As well as doing their own training, the other objective was to find any kind of sign that Matthew had been there. They checked the logs but didn't find Matthew's name printed, nor did they find any physical signs either. In 2016, more than 600,000 Americans were reported missing, according to the FBI's National Crime Information Center. At the end of the year, nearly 85,000 of those cases were still active. Matthew Green is the only unsolved missing person case in Mammoth Lakes. Most people assume that Matt was a victim of some sort of climbing accident, a fall of some sort, says John Greco, Matthew's good friend and climbing partner that met him in California. But all his friends agree that he was experienced, skilled and careful in the mountains. Perhaps it didn't even cross Matthew's mind to tell anyone where he was going, and this is something we should all think about from time to time. We all have a normalcy bias, and because he was so experienced at climbing and had done so many times, the thought process for him was probably automatic and subconscious. It was probably something along the lines of, "It's normally okay, therefore it will be okay this time." Had Matthew have told anyone where he was going and what his plans were, this may have been a very different story. Matthew's loved ones and friends all spoke of how fit he was and how his love for the outdoors translated into an exceptional skill set over the years. When he was young, he became a Boy Scout and spent much time with his dad in the wilderness. This would eventually lead to Matthew spending a great deal of time in mountainous areas with his friends, camping and climbing. He was very highly regarded by everyone who knew him. More than 2 weeks after Matthew talked to his parents for the last time, Detective Hornbeck contacted Verizon for an emergency information request. Verizon concluded that Matthew's phone had been powered off for quite some time and there was no way to track the current location. The last ping Verizon registered was on July the 16th from Mammoth Mountain, and it had created a cone shape with towers in Fresno and June Lake. The Mammoth Lakes Police Department did not find any evidence of foul play, and the potential of this being a purposeful act was quickly ruled out. As mentioned previously, because Matthew hadn't told anyone of his plans, the search and rescue teams couldn't even begin the search effort. They said that there were so many trailheads within the cone area given by Verizon that it was an impossible task. This really was a desperate situation, and the entire effort was effectively blind due to a lack of information. Matthew's family hired an aerial tour company to continuously fly over the area, but this provided no help at all. Detective Hornbeck would later say, "What frustrates me the most with Matthew is he's so experienced, but he didn't tell anyone where he was going. There's nothing wrong with sending a text and saying, 'Hey, I'm going to go climb in the minarets today.' That would solve a lot of problems." It will probably never be completely clear what happened to Matthew, and despite 8 years passing now, no sign of him has ever been found. There is, however, an important lesson to be learned, and that is to make sure that at least one trusted person knows of your plans. As far as I can tell, that is pretty much the extent of the paper trail on Matthew's disappearance, so let's move on to the next one. Ruthanne Rupert was 49 when she disappeared from Yosemite National Park at the start of the century on the 14th of August 2000. The Sandusky Register newspaper described her as a veteran mountain climber who had ascended Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Aconcagua and Half Dome. So you can take from that she appeared to have a lot of experience in the outdoors, and this clearly wasn't her first wilderness hiking session. On the day of her disappearance, she had planned to take part in an organised hike from Yosemite Falls to the Forester area. But unfortunately, she had an eye infection at the time and had to get it checked at the doctors right before the hike took place. Her family said that she was a bit miffed at the timings because she was very much looking forward to the hike, and the family believes that she set off on her own hike later that day. Recordnet.com provides some more information. Rupert had made 2 previous trips to Yosemite in the past 2 years and climbed Half Dome more than once. An avid backpacker and climber, Rupert scaled an Argentine peak December 31 to celebrate the dawn of the new millennium and made it to the top of Tanzania's Mount Kilimanjaro despite a frozen foot, her sister said. She came to Yosemite in August for a strenuous 30-mile backcountry hiking trip, an outing that figured to take 7 days. But the morning of the trip, Rupert developed an eye infection that needed medical attention. Her trip to Yosemite Valley's medical clinic put her behind the rest of the group. Rather than try to catch up, she apparently decided to do something on her own, Ruthanne's sister said. Whilst at Yosemite, Ruthanne reserved the cabin for 2 days, and the article states that it's anyone's guess what happened after that because it doesn't appear that she ever stayed at the cabin. Similar to Matthew, Ruthanne seems to have made the exact same mistake. She never told anyone of her plans, where she was going, or what she intended to do. So the problem they had now is that it was just assumed that she'd gone off on her own hike. This was never proven, though it is an understandable assumption to make. All they had to go on was that she'd missed the organised hike and felt a bit annoyed that she'd missed it because she really wanted to go. Therefore, perhaps she left on her own hike. Equally as important is the fact that, again, similar to Matthew, because she failed to mention her plans, the search and rescue effort was basically compromised from the get-go because they didn't even have a definitive location to search. However, at some point during this search, Mark Stevens, who was the park's spokesman, said that a hiker had come forward to say that he had met Ruthanne sometime before she disappeared. He struck up a conversation with Ruthanne, and she expressed interest in the Indian Canyon and Snow Creek Trail near North Dome. Mark said that this led the search effort to be directed to that general area, but again, no trace of her presence was found at all. Despite 21 years passing since Ruthanne's disappearance, she's never been found, nor has any of her belongings, clothing, etc. In this instance, it's difficult to imagine that something went wrong on the trail because in all likelihood she'd have been found. This was the assumption made by the authorities, at least while searching. At first, they fully believed that if some kind of accident happened on a trail, they'd find her. Instead, we have a situation where Ruthanne disappeared completely without a trace. None of her clothing has ever shown up, nor have any remains ever been discovered. Ultimately, it's not at all clear what happened here. Ruthanne's disappearance does, however, provide a similar lesson to Matthew's. That is, be sure that at least one person knows where you're going. In any case, it seems at this point that we'll never have a full understanding of what happened to Ruthanne or what took place that day. Now, let's explore the final disappearance. Now, let's go further back in time and explore the final disappearance, which I've seen many people describe as very strange. In early October of 1968, Evelyn Rosman, a native Polish woman who had migrated to America in 1956, had planned a trip to Yosemite National Park. It seems Evelyn wanted to get away for a while and immerse herself hiking in the beautiful wilderness areas. On the 16th of October, she rented a car in San Francisco and drove to El Portal, where she spent a night at a motel there. After this, she made her way to Yosemite Village, which is in Yosemite Valley, and spent another night there. She checked out the following morning at 10 AM, drove to Happy Isle, and then hiked to the top of Nevada Falls. It was at some point during this hike where everything took a dark turn. It's not clear to me if Evelyn was ever reported missing, but 3 hikers would come across her body on the 19th of October. The first we hear of this disappearance was from the Marysville Appeal Democrat on the 22nd of October 1968. A woman who apparently fell from the top of Nevada Falls here has been identified as Evelyn Rosman, 24. Park officials said her body was found by a hiker Saturday. Authorities estimated that the young woman had passed away around a week ago. A park spokesman said Miss Rosman apparently hiked to the top of the falls and fell to the bottom. Initially, the local authorities were present at the scene, but the FBI would arrive soon after to take over the investigation. Agent John H. Williams of the FBI would make some statements. The identification was made from fingerprints taken by the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office last May. At that time, Miss Rosman was sent to the county hospital for observation of possible mental disturbance. Or in other words, you could certainly take that as Evelyn perhaps having some troubles at the time. Obviously, it didn't delve into what the problems were, but you can take from that at the time, she might not have been completely herself. It seems it was this finding that led the FBI initially to entertain the idea that this may very well have been a purposeful act by Evelyn. However, John was not fully on board with this idea. The identification has not ended the FBI investigation, John said. Although the presumption is that she either fell or jumped from the top of the falls, there are circumstances which require investigation to see if there is a violation, crime on a government reservation. To John's and the rest of the FBI's dismay, Sheriff Norman Garrett spoke with the press and said this. Sheriff Norman Garrett said that he may call a coroner's jury to try to determine the cause of passing, because there are some aspects that need to be cleared up that don't look as though this was a purposeful act. The sheriff would not specify the suspicious circumstances. The Oakland Tribune would soon after reveal what was found. The rules on YouTube have changed wildly over the years, and you've got to be very careful with how you approach various scenarios, especially as they become more sensitive. So, to get the full context, there is a link to a Patreon post in the description below that is open to everyone for free, so you don't need an account. Do check that out if you want to hear the more sensitive information. In any case, the autopsy found that there was evidence of indecent assault. Upon this discovery, the FBI began searching areas of interest at Nevada Falls. The areas being searched today are in the rugged country of the park where the woman's pocketbook was found by a hiker last Friday, and the spot near the foot of the falls where her body was found the following day. Investigation was originally started by the FBI because of some things that didn't add up. Under Sheriff Paul Page explained today. The body was near the bottom of the falls, but not where you'd expect it to be if she'd fallen, he said. This was a very high fall, and without going into detail here, the damage one would sustain from this would be major, and these injuries were sustained. However, the undersheriff also stated something quite interesting indeed. The flesh and skin were intact, which is not consistent with a 300-foot fall. It's not clear precisely what Paul was referring to here. If this particular aspect of injury or lack thereof wasn't consistent with a 300-foot fall, what is he suggesting happened? Unfortunately, we never get the answer to that question. It's also difficult to even begin speculating because if the injuries sustained were consistent with a fall of this magnitude, but the idea that the skin being completely intact was causing some kind of problem for the investigators to easily explain, then it becomes very difficult. It's interesting too because it was also said that if she had made an effort to jump, then she still wouldn't have been expected to reach the location that she did. Sheriff Norman Garrett said Miss Rosman's purse was found at the top of the falls, and the body was found where it would not have been if she had fallen or jumped. This is curious because we are effectively being told that Evelyn's body was too far away from the point at which one could reasonably have accidentally fallen to or purposefully jumped to. This raises the question, could she have been thrown? If so, and as per the investigators' own reasoning, this must have been a very strong individual to have thrown her to the point of discovery. There is very strong evidence to suggest that a third party was present, it's just not clear if it was an animal, or a person, or both. I say this because there was evidence of indecent assault. However, it's also possible that she may have been moved further away from the initial contact point. Was it a person or an animal that did this? If that's even what happened at all. In any case, that's about as far as I can take that discussion on this platform, so if you're interested in hearing more, then please do have a look at the short article I've written on Patreon, the link will be in the description. At this point, I'd just like to take the time to thank you for watching. If you found the video interesting, then please do leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, it helps me a lot. And if not, then feel free to leave a dislike, I'm just looking for your honest opinion either way. I hope that you've had a great day, or evening depending on where you are, and I'll see you in the next one. Be safe guys, peace.